Just like that, we'll go ahead and get started.
Cool.
I'm here today with Mindset Mike Moor at the Unfair Advantage. He is a mindset coach. He works with the premier athletes across the country. I see you have 11 world titles and been a part of 5 college national championships. And they all had one common denominator, and it's the advantage in their mindset. So like any good story, let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got started, and what you do.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, a couple things. I'm a wrestler my whole life. If you were to ask me like who I am as a person, wrestling would be one of the first 3 things that come up. So I grew up wrestling in New York. I was on the East Coast for the majority of my life. Wrestled in college, wrestled Division I. When I graduated, I was in the FBI for like 7 years. So that was a lot of fun. I got to do hostage negotiation, forensic accounting. The main thing I did the first 3.5 years was national security surveillance. I was the program manager, background investigations. I got to do a bunch of stuff.
Dang.
So, but in the midst of that, like what led me to here was I opened up a wrestling club in Houston. First year, we had 13 kids in the state finals. 9 should have won. 5 kind of like shit the bed. And my thing was that I was always really good at bringing out the best in people. So in the biggest match of the year, 5 kids just didn't perform well, even though they had the right advice, and some of them had even good high school coaches, and there's just no reason for them to not do well. So I realized there was a gap between like their potential and their performance. I sought out resources. I used the company. I ended up leaving the FBI in 2016 for that mental performance company, and then 7-8 years later, once I had clients who went in at the highest level, I decided it was best to do stuff on my own, created some of my own material. And that's kind of what led me here. So I went from New York to Maryland to DC to Houston, Texas, to now I'm in San Diego. And, it's been quite a journey to get here. But, if wrestling taught you anything, I tell my clients all the time, it's not how hard you work, it's how smart you work. But in the beginning of anyone's like athletic or entrepreneur journey, I would definitely say like outworking my competition so that I can get to the top as quickly as possible and be so far away from everybody in the process was definitely something that as I'm on my way over here, just reflecting of what the last 10 years look like, I feel like I definitely outworked whoever my competition could have been. And yeah, it leads me here today. So, the company that I was with, it was mainly focused on like high school and middle school and some college. And then very quickly, I started attracting very high profile athletes, NCAA championship teams and stuff like that. So the main people that I work with now, like one-on-one, are like top performing individual athletes and teams. And then I scaled that business because I wanted to scale my impact. And I work with a lot of people now in 1-to-many courses. So, right now I have cohort 3 of my reverse engineering success course. It's an 8-week course where I have competitors from 18 different states and 6 different countries right now in this course. So super, super cool. So just thankful to be here in Spokane as one of the many things that I get to call work.
That's awesome. So we'll go back to your D1 wrestling time. At that time, do you feel like you had a mental edge already? Did you have any sort of mindset coach? Did you know that played such a big role in success in sports?
That's a great question. So I'd always say like mindset was an edge of mine, but growing up in the early 2000s, like we didn't really have access to a ton on the internet. So it was like mainly library related things. The internet first started coming around. So my high school coach, not the best technician, but very good for all of us mentally. He would always tell us like, I genuinely don't care if you win. Like he convinced us that like winning was not important, but you better be the toughest kid on the mat. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people say that casually, but he really meant that. So a lot of us, especially myself included, really took that to heart. So I wanted to go out there and show that I was tough, be tougher, make that person never want to compete against me again. And I think subconsciously that just removed my attachment to winning. So now when I got to college, I definitely felt like I was a little underprepared at times, not from lack of effort just from like my high school experience, right? In the beginning, I was a little underprepared. I would wrestle the singlet, I would do stuff like that. I would see a kid from a really good school. So I recognized that that was an issue of, not necessarily an issue of mine, but I recognized it was an issue. So with the minimal exposure to the internet at the time, like I would heavily read about sports psych. I was very passionate about the mentality side of the sport. And I studied a lot when I was in college. Didn't have a sports psychologist. We had access to them. I saw one once or twice. Just didn't really vibe. It was like a tennis player or a volleyball player, And I think ball sport athletes can coach ball sport athletes, but it's hard for them to coach fighters. And on the flip side, I feel like fighters can coach anyone. So I recognize the importance. I was interested in pursuing a career in sports psych, but at the time, it just really wasn't a thing. You needed to like have an internship somewhere. Like if you either needed to have a private practice or get hooked up with someone. And in 2005, that was just like not really a thing. I wouldn't be here without the existence of social media, or I wouldn't be here in the capacity that I am without the existence of social media. So I pursued a different career. So I wanted to do behavioral science in the FBI. My ultimate goal was to be in the criminal minds unit as one of their, I wanted to go back to school, get my forensic psych, master's, maybe even a PhD, things like that. And that was the direction that I was going. And I got to spend some time in that unit, but it was something where psychology was important to me, but psychology in sports was not really a big thing yet.
So you kind of just briefly touched on it of wanting to be in the kind of mental side of being in the FBI. How did your time in the FBI and hostage negotiation and kind of getting to understand the mental part of, criminals or whoever you might have been working with, how does that translate over to athletes, and what are some similarities that you learned from working with people in the FBI to athletes?
It's a great question. Not just people in the FBI. So when I was in college, I interned at what was called a pre-release center. So it was people that were transitioning from being locked up for a decent or a long amount of time back into society. So I chose that career.
And we're back. A little bit of sunny technical difficulties, but now it looks better than ever. Won't have to worry about it the rest of the time.
Yeah.
We're back.
So we were talking about, so when I was in college, I knew that like psychology was what I was most passionate about when it came to this sort of stuff. And I wanted to do an internship that was going to give me access into not just the experience of being in law enforcement, intelligence, stuff like that, but like in the experience on the other side of like how criminals think. So this particular internship gave me a ton of one-on-one time with these people to understand, like, why did you commit the same crime 6-7 times? Like why are you and all of your family still stuck in this gang life? Like, why don't you see the opportunity to pursue outside of that? But so I got a lot of exposure from that, and then that made me really interested to like continue to find more. I took 36 credits of psychology when I was in college, psychology of terrorism, abnormal psychology, like a lot of stuff just to understand how people's minds work. And so in the FBI, I would say like the one thing that really taught, like there's two things that I feel like really helped me the most in my career now. One is understanding what real pressure is. People are like, oh my God, I got this fight, I got this. I'm like, oh my God, I got this target that like wants to blow up the Secretary of Defense. And like, I can't, and if I lose him, like he could blow up a building. That's real pressure. You're 22 years old and it's 5:30 in the morning and you're watching someone's hotel room. And, I remember like once I messed up and I missed it, like that's pressure. Getting to fight, like you chose to be there, you want to be there, you're getting paid to be there. People would love to even be good enough to get a fight, let alone get paid for it. So I think the understanding of what real pressure feels like. And then I think the other thing that it really helped me with was in the negotiation 40-hour school, you learn what's called tactical empathy. So if you ever heard of Chris Voss or the FBI negotiator, he wrote the book like Never Split the Difference. Pretty famous. He's like the godfather of negotiation. So you learn a lot about tactical communication, and tactical empathy is essentially like building rapport with someone in a difficult situation. And by showing them empathy, you get a lot more out of them than trying to coach them out of the situation or bark at them. You know, like you can't, obviously if someone's barricaded themselves inside a house and they've got someone hostage, like they understand they're not in a good situation if the FBI is outside. But, you know, you can't talk to them with logic. You have to build empathy in that situation and help them feel like you understand them. They feel safe, they feel seen, and then they'll start listening to logic, which is you need to come out, otherwise we're going to come in and shoot you. Makes sense. So I would say like the communication skills that I learned through that experience was really impactful. I think understanding the value of like chain and command was something that really helped me because I can navigate a lot of like the difficulties of the fight world between managers and coaches and athletes and, you know, family members. So understanding how to navigate that and spending a lot of time understanding like the psychology behind why people do what they do. You know, if you can understand evil people, and if you can understand, not all criminals are evil, but if you can understand why people do bad things, it's a lot easier to coach them on how to do good things.
This ties me into another question I was going to ask later, but same thing with those criminals, and not exactly same thing with the athletes, but how much of how they were raised or their parents or kind of just their mentality given to them based on their situations growing up plays an impact on your mindset as an adult?
Tremendous. So my sister's a trauma therapist. I've been through like a ton of that myself just over the years. And your childhood, whether you remember it or not, like you could think you had a good childhood, and then like you go and dig back and you're like, oh wow, actually like I had a lot of issues. You know, everyone thinks of like death, divorce, grieving, like these serious events. Like there's a lot of things in our childhood. Think of emotional trauma just like an injury. You know, like you don't think of when you blew your ankle out as that big of a deal compared to when you tore your ACL. But because you blew your ankle out, didn't take care of it right, now you got knee problems. Because you got a knee problem, now you got a hip problem. That's how trauma works. So your childhood formed the majority of how you handle things later on in life, from the way you handled your parents, the situations that you went through, to like your experience in school. So I think for them, it was tremendous. So like I realized that like the way they were raised was a big reason to why they were the way they were. Like, why you keep gangbanging? Like you have so many other options that you can do, and you chose a life that your uncle chose, that your dad chose, that your brother chose. Like you see there's another path. And they don't see value in, at the time, working $10 an hour at the Safeway. They see getting arrested as an occupational hazard. And you know, it's just, I can make a couple $1,000s in a day, I'm like arrested. I can make $10 an hour and I'd rather die. Right. So it's all you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So their childhood formed their decision making for the rest of their lives. So translate that into athletes. Their experiences with winning and losing, their experiences with how they were coached, their experiences with the sport in general, fighters and wrestlers, the experience with weight cutting. Like it's, again, trauma is just an injury that occurred earlier on in your life. So think of, as wrestlers, like how much traumatic stuff, like probably the most traumatic sport, like in addition to gymnastics, for how unhealthy our relationship is with like our weight and like our body image and stuff. So yeah, so much of what happened to them in practice and sports with their parents, with their coaches, the relationship with the sport in general was formed when we were kids. So my daughter right now is 11. She's very competitive in softball, and I tell her mom all the time that I don't care how good of a team she's on. Under no circumstances are we going to negotiate a situation where it's going to compromise her relationship with softball, the fun she's having. And like, we're not going to be around bad coaches. We're not going to be around bad players and teammates and toxic parents. She's very good. Like, it's not because it's my kid. Like, she's very good. She'll be a Division I full scholarship type softball player if she maintains a healthy relationship with her sport. She loves playing softball. She loves all the things about softball. She doesn't like striking out. She doesn't like losing. She doesn't like, not getting a hit because she bats cleanup in over like 400 or 500, right? So she's very, very good, but she has a healthy relationship with it. So if that continues, then her progress is going to go through the roof. If that doesn't continue, then that's the only reason why she would not end up reaching her full potential. There's always there's an incident I remember with my daughter. We were bowling. She was younger too, like maybe 8 years old, 7 years old. And she got to strike her first roll and then literally gutter ball every single one. So after like the fourth or fifth frame, I'm like, hey, you want some bumpers? No, I don't want bumpers. And at like, you know, or what do they call it? Like not pin 8. After like the 8th round, like or the 7th round, I like just called in and got bumpers. So she goes up and she goes to roll the bowling ball and she sees the bumpers and starts screaming, crying. She's like, I told you, I don't want bumpers. This is not, I don't need bumpers. I was like, I know, but like, I just want you to hit some pins. She's like, Dad, it's not about how many pins I hit. It's like whether or not I'm having fun and like enjoying my time with you. She's like 7.
Dang.
I'm like, damn, she must be listening to my calls. You know what I'm saying? You know, and she's like, I don't care if I hit a gutter ball every single time. I'm having fun, and I'm having fun with you. And like checked me. I was like, damn, dude, like she's right.
That's deep, especially for a kid, especially when you think you're doing the right thing and you got your own blinders on because she's so close. But that's probably what you'd be saying to somebody that wasn't your kid.
Yeah, the parents and the coaches, like those of you that are listening, especially the parents, like. This is a great example of you're trying really hard to do something good for your kid. Like you want your kid to be successful so bad that ultimately like you compromise some of your own advice and your own values. And I'll give a really simple example. A lot of parents will like game plan for their kids. Oh, I saw who you're going to get next. And this is what they do. And this is what they do. It sounds good in theory because you really want to help your kid. But realistically, like the best thing that you could do is encourage them to give their best effort because a lot of parents will spend all the time game planning. And then all their kid thinks about is what the other kid's going to do. Right. You mean well. Like I wanted my daughter to knock pins down. It means well. But at this point in her life, she values fun versus winning. Right. So that's also a good point of understanding for parents and coaches out there of young athletes that the kids you're around and your own children are going to consume the content that you put out. So like my daughter literally spit out stuff that she hears me on team calls and group calls and individual calls all the time. She didn't formulate that opinion for herself at 7 years old. She formulated that opinion because she hears me talk about it all the time. And that's what formed her reality. So, you know, understand that like the words that you choose and like the actions that you take, your kids are going to consume. Brene Brown's a famous I don't know if she's a social psychologist or sociologist, leadership coach, whatever you want to call her. But she talks about you can spend the time to choose your words carefully, or you can spend the time picking up the pieces after you didn't.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And that ties into what we were talking about earlier. The inverse is just as true. If your mom's on the phone in the other room talking shit about your dad or saying how crappy their situation is that they're in, that kid's going to bring that to school. And if he doesn't say it, he's going to sure think it because that's his reality. If that's all he's hearing, that's what's going into his head and that's what's real.
Something you got to think of too is that like kids that are in difficult situations in their personal life, sports is their escape. So that's why like coaches play such a vital role because in many instances, like a lot of the people that were in jail, they didn't grow up with like strong father figures. So, or, you know, strong mother figures for that matter either. So the coaches that are in their lives might be the greatest impact that they have outside of like one of the biological parents that are there. So, you know, I think sometimes, especially at the younger levels, we forget that it's not about winning. And, you know, especially when they're really young, it's about like having fun, falling in love in the sport. You get older, you start learning how to perform, but you're still having fun. Then like the workshop I did with all the fighters at Mode with Dylan Lemery, you know, like now we can have fun breaking people. You know, you get to a certain level where like you love the sport, I'm having fun and I'm getting used to like performing well. I'm learning how to perform well. Now I can learn how to systematically beat someone's ass.
So that took me, I'll get back to what I was going to say later, but that reminded me, Kai Stewart's bare knuckle world championship fight. In the middle of the fight, he was screaming, or I think he was in the corner, says, I'm going to break him. I'm going to break him. And then he landed a combo in the second or third round and showed his opponent, I broke you, dude. He fucking broke him in the middle of the fight. And then I was with him last night at the grand opening for DL Training Systems. And he was talking to me and he said that you had told him if you get punched in the face, step back, take a deep breath, go back in it. But he was in the fight, got punched in the face, thought about what you had told him. Should I take a breath? Should I step back? And he said, fuck that. I'm going to go get him. And I was like, well, you know what? I feel like that had the same effect because mentally you stepped back and you thought about stepping back, but you didn't. And then you got back in his face. So I think it worked. He didn't, if you looked at it, he probably didn't look like he took your advice, but being able to step back mentally might have even been more important.
The lesson there is that because we brought attention to it ahead of time, he set intentions for how he was going to handle it. So just taking that moment to think about it, period, allowed him to pause and refocus. Like when I work with athletes and in my course, we talk about the 4 R's to emotional control, which is recognize whether it's your thoughts productive or unproductive, hit your refocus or reset button like a physical gesture to pause time, reframe the thought in the most productive way, respond in the most productive way. So in that moment for him, excuse me, because he took a step back and he was able to evaluate the situation, he made a judgment call. Had he gotten knocked out 5 seconds later, we might be having a different conversation. But he made a judgment call like with an educated decision versus I got hit and he rushes,
Right.
or versus I got hit and now I shut down. That's usually what happens, is that like something bad happens and someone's brain shuts down, right? Or it speeds up too much. And for him, it actually slowed down so he can pause and make a good decision. So with the information he had provided at the time, the best decision in his mind was to push forward. But the lesson here is that he stopped, thought about it, made a decision. He responded instead of reacted.
How hard is it for an athlete to be able to think during an athletic performance? Does it just take enough reps like anything else in the gym where you can react to slipping a left hand and countering? Is it the same kind of practice and technique that goes into doing these mental exercises and implementing those in the big events?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So it's 2 parts. Yes, it takes reps, but really what it takes is systems. So you can watch a bunch of YouTube videos, read a bunch of books, and get some like tools, right? Like let's say you read a post about about my reset button, and you heard about what a reset button is, but you don't have like the reps and the data that we measure and manage. You don't have the process and the system of emotional control to where like when things go wrong, you default to the level of your systems, right? So if you don't have a system in there, then it's going to be really hard for you to be able to respond well consistently, right? So if I teach them the systems, but we don't get the reps and we don't collect data every day on how good of a job we're doing, like how good was your emotional control today, 1 to 5? How can you close the gap tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow? So you need the system, but you need the reps and the data as well. So I think that's like usually people are missing one or both, or they missing, one or the other, or they're missing both, and they're just going to bite down on their mouthpiece and react on instinct. So everyone talks about how important mindset is, how it's 80% mental, 70% mental, but we train almost 100% physically. So train your brain the way that you train your mind, which is systematically and with reps and collecting data and information. Like if you're like Dylan collects data on all his athletes, and like they're not just their 1 rep max and things like that, like their heart rate, their this, their that, so he can make an informed decision, and so that they can systematically grow. He has a systematic approach to his training. He collects data, and then they're able to grow exponentially and grow quickly. So mental performance is no different. You need the system, you need the tools, but you need the reps and you need the data. And that's why, because Kai had repped it so much, it became second nature. He didn't have to like put his hand up and say, hold on a second, let me think. He didn't just react on instinct. And you can definitely instinctually react like as if you would be slipping jabs and things like that. But again, that comes with lots of reps. So most people are wanting to react on instinct, but they don't actually like have the systems and the reps that are correctly formulated in something that a mental training platform would provide. So you've got a lot of reps of trying to reset during rounds and sparring and stuff like that, but you don't actually have reps where there's like a systematic approach to managing your thoughts and feelings.
Makes so what do you think defines mental toughness, and how do you know when an athlete has kind of broken through to that level of Kai Stewart, for example, where you're confident that he can be able to reset what he needs to?
Think like on the way up, a lot of people look at mental toughness as your ability to like push past being tired, your ability to push past like, nicks and cuts and injuries. Like that's how we look at being tough, right? When you get to the top, being tough is like you don't negotiate with yourself. It's doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. Being tough is about like commitment over motivation. Like you do the things that you don't want to do when you don't feel like doing it, when you don't feel like doing it. And the next level of that is you choose to do those things. You choose to suffer on purpose, right? Like I understand that psychologically and scientifically doing things that I don't want to do and doing hard things actually grows me not only as a human ideologically, but literally the mid-cingulate cortex in your brain grows every single time that you do something hard that you don't want to do. It shrinks every time that you negotiate with yourself and don't do something hard. That's I saw that in the Huberman Goggins episode. And he talks about how that part of your brain, it's smaller in obese people. It gets bigger when they diet. It's larger in athletes. And over time, it actually gets bigger when you age. So people that are older, they have a larger mid-cingulate cortex than someone that's younger. So not only does that say that, let me rephrase, the mid-cingulate cortex is in part is responsible for willpower, right? So not only is it the seat of willpower, he's essentially saying it's like the seat of the will to live. So when you choose to do hard things on purpose, right, that's the peak level of toughness, right? The next level is that like I can make it through hard things. I'm durable. I'm adaptable. I can make it through hard things. And then there's everybody else that negotiates with themselves. So every time you negotiate with yourself, not only does your brain shrink, but the gap between how easy and hard it is to make that tough decision is going to get larger and larger and larger. So if you're negotiating with yourself on a day-to-day, like when you wake up, how hard you go in training, the last rep, well, what do you think is going to show up in the fight? Like you're not just going to turn it up. You're going to turn it up based on like all the times you didn't negotiate with yourself before. So if I were to go back to Kai, this was the most consistent, dedicated, committed Kai's ever been in any sort of camp ever. He also made a lot of sacrifices. He came to Spokane for a few weeks and left his girlfriend, left his life, left everything to live on somebody else's couch so he could train. So that discipline also obviously gives you a ton of belief in yourself. I feel like part of confidence is your ability to keep promises to yourself. And if you choose to do hard things, then when life throws hard things at you unexpectedly, you're conditioned to deal with them. It doesn't take a lot of time and effort. It's kind of almost like second nature. So I think Kai is a great example of someone that does a great job of that. We had a girl in our course that just won a Muay Thai title. Her like best asset is her discipline and consistency. Another girl that took second at American Nationals, third at American Nationals in gi and no gi. Most consistent, disciplined person I've ever met. Like that's their weapon, so their brain doesn't have to have a lot of chatter. Like it's hard, do it. And then those are also the type of people that it's hard. Ooh, I like this. Let me lean into it. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that your willpower can actually be measured and is a real thing. That's
literally your brain grows or your brain shrinks, like scientifically, not like ideologically. So like if you measure your brain matter, like every time you do or don't do something, it grows or it shrinks. So you can literally make yourself smarter by choosing to do hard things. So I call that being anti-fragile, right? So fragile people break. Tough people endure. They're durable, but they don't learn. Anti-fragile people are durable and adaptable. So they can make mid-fight, mid-camp, mid-life adjustments a lot easier, even when they're difficult. So if you could be durable and adaptable, then you're anti-fragile. You're the opposite of being easy to kill. You are hard to kill. And that's kind of what I want to build in athletes. Like I want to build the anti-fragile athlete. I was actually thinking about that on the way here. I was like, maybe I should rename like part of my program, something like that, because I do talk about it. Like if I have 5 exercises on building resilience and the peak goal is becoming anti-fragile. And when I think of anti-fragile, have you ever seen the movie Batman vs Superman?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Do you remember is in this movie, there was a villain, massive like rock looking guy, not the rock dude from Fantastic Four, but like there was this massive like demon in the shape of a rock person. Well, what was happening is that they were trying to kill it. So they were throwing bombs and bullets and, missiles at it. Every time it got hit with a bomb, missile, or bullet, it got bigger and got bigger and got bigger. So when they tried to kill it, it made it stronger. So it absorbed all the energy. So that's the same thing as a human, right? Like if you could see adversity as an advantage, right? And you lean into hard things, then what happens is that like adversity is something that makes you stronger. So you seek it out, you lean into it, you're not afraid of it. My goal is I want to build armor for athletes, right? So I call building a bulletproof athlete. And the goal here is that you're going to get shot. You're going to get shot, but you understand that your armor is so strong that not only will it not penetrate, but you're not afraid to run right into enemy territory. So that's the goal, is that at the peak level, if you can put somebody into the ring feeling like that, the only way they lose is if they get caught or they get beat by somebody better. And we can live with either of those.
Mm-hmm. Just like your old coach said, as long as you're the toughest dude on the mat. But shit, anybody can get caught, especially in combat sports. It's a very fine line.
Here's the thing with toughness and coaches. Like, how many of the coaches out there go out there, be tough? I would love to poll their athletes and see how many of them give the same definition of what toughness is, right? So as a coach, if you want to tell your guys to be tough, outline exactly what toughness looks like in a bullet point format. If I tell you to be tough, then what I'm saying is I want you to do this. I want you to do this. I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to do this. These are the things I want you to do and not do, right? I want you to be aggressive. Well, this is what I think aggressiveness means. So I have my athletes define, think of what are 3 words you would hope someone would describe your best performance. And those are their like key performance indicators, their KPIs, or competitive excellence pillars. They rate themselves every day. So let's say Kai wanted to be, smart, fast, and aggressive. Every day he's writing himself on how smart he was, how fast he was, how aggressive he was. And well, what does aggressive looks like? This, this, this. What does smart look like? This, this, this. What does fast look like? This, this, this. So every day he's trying to live up to these like performance value standards instead of the expectation of trying to win. So when we say be aggressive, he knows exactly what he's looking for. Like you can't be aggressive without a direction. It's like running with your head down, right? So if you want to be aggressive, you want to be tough, know exactly what that means to you as an athlete and as coaches. If you want to tell your guys to do that, saying go out there and be tough is about as effective as being like, hey, it's all in here. Relax. Just telling them a word. Mm-hmm. When you define what it means and you hold them accountable to that and they hold themselves accountable, then it's a lot easier to measure and manage that process. Then you can reverse engineer toughness. You can reverse engineer being aggressive. You know what it looks like in the conditions that you need and not need. So you evaluate those things every day. They manifest themselves in the fight. The Muay Thai girl, I asked her, I was like, hey, how would you, if you could use 3 words to describe your performance last night, how would you describe it? Or what did I say? What did other people tell you about your performance? And she was like, dude, it's crazy. They all used the words that I chose. It's like, well, no shit. You're literally trying to fight as if it's a vehicle to paint a picture of these 3 things you value most in yourself. So of course you went and showcased those things. Of course they're going to call you fierce. Of course they're going to call you powerful. Of course they're going to say you fought like a champion.
Because you
were. And that's what you've done the last 8 weeks. Every day you've tried to be that type of person. So of course you're going to manifest that in the fight. And you're not shouting affirmations in the mirror of like, I am powerful. I am a champion. I am fierce. Like, yeah, you could say those things for reinforcement, but like bringing attention and setting intentions to being those things every day in practice, taking data on how good of a job that you did as you manage your emotions, trying to be those things. That's how you manifest it into existence, by taking data. You don't manifest abundance and wealth and a fucking Ferrari shows up. Like you manifest the intentions of what you want to accomplish that will lead you to the ability to get a Ferrari, opportunities, things like that.
So kind of similar to what you're just saying, are there any like run-of-the-mill bullshit mental coaches out there that give slang advice like what you were just saying? And how far off are they from accomplishing what they're saying they can solve?
So I'm trying to be as politically correct here as I can.
Fucking idiots.
Yeah. So thankfully in my industry, there's not a lot of people that are bad at what they do. It's hard to like be bad. But there are absolutely levels to this shit. And the way that I would describe it is the majority of the people in my space, let's say, and I have nothing against anybody in my space, but let's just explain the different levels and how they go. The majority of people in my space took somebody else's certification course, right? And then that person probably got most of their information either from school, like they went to school and learned how to win by reading books in classes, or they learned from somebody else. So you got a certification course that came from somebody else's information that they gained from books that were written 15, 20 years ago. A lot of the principles of sports psych on a foundational level are very standardized, and like everyone can deliver it in a different way. But I would say the majority of people in this industry learn by a quick certification. The other people in the industry, a lot of them are good, and a lot of the people that learn from school are good. But I didn't learn how to win from reading books, right? And I don't think you're going to win from reading books. Like I interviewed for a pretty significant position as an associate mental performance director for a large institution. And they're like, oh, you don't have like your master's or your PhD? I'm like, bro, you don't learn to win from books. And they're like, well, they're just credentials that we require. I'm like, this is a performance-driven institution.
Like you have championships.
You have a 58% rate of transferring kids from this high school to Division I sports. No one coming here is because they want to learn about photosynthesis. So if essentially what it boiled down to was they're like, yeah, we just need those credentials to kind of cover our ass. So they recognize, and they said, they were like, yeah, we're trying to transition to people that are more so like practical experience, but for our institution, we need to have like degrees and stuff. You know how much of my degree that cost me over $100,000 that I use in the FBI? Like fucking this much. Okay. Like I spent $100,000 on a degree so I can like check a box on my application and like learn life and social skills to be able to adapt when I got into the real world. Being in the FBI, bro, I spent 6 weeks in training. And when I got there, they're like, you think you're ready, huh? I'm like, yeah, I'm so ready. They're like, you don't know shit. They're like, talk to me in 6 months, like on the job. That's how you're going to learn. So I think a lot of people learn from certifications. They do okay. A lot of people learn from books. They do okay. I think there's a lot of value. The other issue is that most of the advice that's given out there is very cookie cutter. So like a guy that like I respect who's done good work, I've had people take his course, and I see what he puts out is really great. But ultimately what it is, it's very cookie cutter sounding type advice. So I can give you advice, I can give you tools, or I can build you systems, right? And so for me, when I went on this journey, I had no desire to read a book. I read no books for like 7 years. I read one book and it was given to me by someone I respected, and I read it cover to cover. I haven't read a book, right? Like everything that I learned came from getting on 50 to 70 flights a year. And I was like, I'm going to work with or learn from the best in the world at what they do. I'm going to absorb myself in what the best athletes are doing, what the best coaches are doing, what they're doing and not doing. I'm going to meticulously study like what the greats are doing, and I'm going to consolidate. And I say that like I created a Frankenstein version of mental performance. Like I took this person's arm, this person's leg, this person's head, this person's ear, and I consolidated that and synthesized it into something that I felt like I can rinse and repeat for success at a high level. So to summarize, I don't think there's a lot of bad people in my industry. I think there's a lot of people that took a certification. I think there's a bunch of people that learned in school. I think there's value in both of those things. I think they've all helped people win some stuff. But there's levels to this shit. And I made a post the other day. There's people that work with world champions, right? Like they could put in their resume, they worked with somebody that has won a world championship. Props to them for getting the access to those people. You made a good enough impression that somebody that's smart is want to work with you. There's a difference between that and people that seek you out and you help them win world championships. So I always say, like, if you're looking for a high level mindset coach, they could tell you how many people they worked with that did certain things. How many of those fight camps were you a part of, right? You could work with a 3-time UFC champion. How many of those fight camps, like, did you help them win a UFC championship, right? You could work with teams that have won NCAA titles. How many NCAA championships have you won, right? Like, I got 5 NCAA championship rings and 20 high school state championship rings. Those are things that I've been a part of those seasons. So I know what it takes to win championships, not just what it takes to work with a champion.
A few things pop into my mind. First, it's like, I would way rather have a jacked personal trainer with no degree that's been in the gym, knows what works, knows what doesn't, than a fat personal trainer with all the certifications in the world. Like, just one quick glance at you, I'll tell you who's been there, who's done that, who knows what works in real life. And not only that, but science changes so much. I don't know exactly how it is for mental toughness, but I'm sure it's just like anything else. Food science, health science, exercises, everything's going to be evolving. There's always going to be new data that supports what's going to be best for what type of athlete. And you can't know that unless you test it and put it through the ringer and have results based off of what you put in, instead of 20-year-old textbook. This should work. Here you go.
A lot of the foundations of sports psych remain the same. And in all of our programming, like, the foundations of sports psych are similar. They're delivered in slightly different ways. The difference is, like, are these battle tested strategies and systems? Like, everyone talks about some sort of reset button. Everyone talks about visualization. Everyone talks about breath work. Everyone talks about, they have all these acronyms for their stuff. And, like, that's all great. The difference is like, were they formed in a textbook, or were they formed in a battlefield with information that we built from the foundations of those textbooks? Makes sense? Does it sound like something does it sound cookie cutter, or does it sound well, I mean, I've had 20 people beat number one in the country or the world, so it's hard for me to pick like one of those experiences. In all these teams, a lot of them they were among some of those upsets as well. So I would say, like, there's some great team accomplishments that I can think of. You wrestled in high school, right? So do you know what Fargo is? Right. So I've had 2 teams break the national record for place winners at Fargo. Dang. One year my one team got 9 on one high school team.
Jeez.
And then another team called me. They're like, whatever you did with them, like, we want you to work with us. So the next year they went from losing 13 in the blood round to placing 13 at the Fargo tournament.
Jeez.
13 Fargo All-Americans on one high school team. So that was a pretty cool turnaround, like 13 losses in the blood round to 13 All-Americans, which shattered a record that prior to the previous year stood for many, many years, right? That was pretty wild. Having a team like Northwestern Lacrosse, who had made the Final Four 5 years in a row, lost. They won 7 national championships in a row in the 2000s, hadn't won in 10 years. Second year we worked together. In the championship playoffs, we outscored opponents 30. What was it? We outscored opponents by 30 plus goals. Dang. Yeah, we mercy ruled the team in the finals.
Whoa.
Yeah, that team beat us by double digits the year before.
Holy shit.
That's a pretty wild turnaround. Another crazy one, like, probably my, like, the coolest coaching moment that I ever had was when Amanda Levy beat Gabby Garcia. That was the biggest upset in jiu-jitsu history. And I would say it's probably, when you put it on paper, one of the biggest upsets in sports history. Wow. I thought that was pretty wild. She's a 14-time black belt world champion. She lost 4 times in 22 years. Obviously, if you know what Gabby looks like, she weighs about 300 pounds. Amanda weighed about 155 pounds. She was the 1 seed to the 8th seed. Amanda wasn't even doing jiu-jitsu full-time anymore. She was fighting MMA. Came in and fights, grapples Gabby Garcia, doesn't just beat her, shatters her in a million pieces. Since then, I think Gabby's like 2-4 in competition. Dang. She's lost more since than she did in her whole career. That was a pretty cool one. Another lacrosse team that won an NCAA championship. They made 8 Final Fours, 3 finals, never won. And then we won back-to-back. We beat like the Yankees of Division III lacrosse. They won like 13 national titles, beat them in double overtime. The next year, they were losing by 5 in the first quarter. Largest deficit they've had in like many years. Came back and were up by as much as double digits. So those are like some of the really cool stories. I think, like, in addition to the cool stories, like, I've just gotten to work with some really high profile people, like getting to work with Wei Lee post Rose. So helping her Rose 2, Joanna, and like through Carlos Esparza was pretty cool. Helping Figueredo in his camp to beat Moreno. That was pretty cool. Patricky Pitbull to finally win a Bellator world title. He went from getting medical stopped the last fight against that same guy to winning. That was pretty cool. I've been really fortunate to work with so many. Like when I write stuff down, I'm like, wow, like what a life. You know, it's really, really, really cool. But I also have enjoyed like helping kids win high school state titles. I've enjoyed helping an archery team win a national championship. I've enjoyed some of the performances where we took second were some of the most enjoyable things. One of the teams I worked with, they took second at the state tournament. It was probably the greatest second place finish of all time. They went 9 for 11 in the blood round. Like, that's wild. In the round, for those of you that don't know, the blood round is the round where you win or go home. And that's usually where a lot of people lose. They went 9 for 11 in the blood round. They scored the fourth most points in state tournament history.
Dang.
To still get second and lose by 7 points. Because the other team cheated, but that's fine. That's another conversation. You know?
Yeah, man. Is that one of your goals and something that you're working yourself towards?
Joe Rogan follows me on Twitter.
What?
Yeah, I wish he followed me on Instagram because I don't post on Twitter. But yeah, I got a shout out once on Rogan, and he followed me.
Whoa.
I immediately emailed and did all the things, and didn't get a response. But yeah, Joe Rogan follows me on Twitter.
Dang.
Conor McGregor liked one of our reels the other day, so that was pretty cool. And I got like on social media, I get a lot of people that follow me. Like John Jones follows me, Henry Cejudo follows me, Rose Namajunas follows me, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chiesa. Like I can think of a million like really famous people. But a goal for mine is not just to be a person that has the influence where people want to listen. I would love to, like I said, be on a podcast with one or two people that I think that are genuinely smarter than me because they've interviewed people smarter than me. Like Joe Rogan has to have people like Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink, Chris Williamson, because they've interviewed so many smart people. I feel like myself, I'm really good at what I do because I'm a consolidation of thousands of really smart athletes, business owners, coaches. I can't imagine. Like, they've literally interviewed the smartest people on the planet. Like, how much smarter they are. Like, if there was a way to measure that, how much smarter they are than all of us, myself included. You know, but definitely a goal. When I get on Rogan, and then I'm looking to. There's a lot of neuroscience behind what I do. A lot with like learning how to weaponize the brain chemicals to leverage performance. So I'm looking into right now, like getting some sports science studies done to measure like my athletes' brains beginning of my 8 weeks, end of my 8 weeks, and see what the differences are. And I think when I get those sort of studies published, then Huberman will call,
Dang.
and those sort of people. But yeah, like really to get on Rogan, all you need is the right shout out. When the right person says your name and they're interested, they'll pop on. So cross my fingers. It's not when, it's not if, it's when. And I don't have like the delusions of grandeur. Like I will be on Joe Rogan. I said that many years ago. I didn't get into this business. To be good. And then when I feel like I became the best, I realized I don't want to be the best. I want to be the only. I want to be the only person that can genuinely do what I do on a consistent basis, not just be really, really good or be considered the best at what I do in combat sports.
Dang. That's crazy. I could definitely see it happening. Your resume is building up to be something unheard of. And like you were saying, if you can get the cold hard evidence, the undeniable proof.
Science, you can't, I have a lot of anecdotal data. That when I work with people that do wild shit, like the how many people I've had pull massive upsets like this is in world championships, things like that. Like this, but the data, the anecdotal data is undeniable. Give me science and I'm bulletproof. Like a lot of the biohacking stuff, like there's data behind it. There's science behind it. Like you cannot refute that, like when you do this happens. So, I'd love to like develop like a method that then gets utilized, rinsed and repeated and white labeled to where I can impact people in a greater space. Like the goal for me is to, in the next couple of years to spend more time speaking and working in the business world, kind of what Jocko did, right? Like he was a coach and athlete his whole life. Then he was, in the Navy SEALs. Then he took that and applied his principles to now be the great, the number one leadership speaker in the world. So I want to take what I've learned to build championship athletes and teams and help people chase like the next sport in their life, which is business.
So you have goals to be on Rogan and talk to Chris Williamson. Do you have any goals or dream athletes that you want to be working with?
It's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. I feel like there's definitely people that I've like come across that I'd love to work with. No one that like really sticks out to me.
Or even like in the business world. I mean, fuck Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, top tier business.
A lot of the top tier people, like I love working with 1%ers, but there's certain 1%ers that you wouldn't want to work with. So like I won't name names in MMA, but there's people that if I got approached, I would say no. And I've said that to people. They're like, well, how would you say no? I'm like, liability.
McGregor.
No. No.
He seems scary.
Yeah. I think like there's just a lot of someone can be very good at what they do, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily the best personality fit. So like Dylan, I interview everybody, right? And there's like certain things that I need. I could help at everyone, but there's certain people that also aren't very coachable, right? So I think people misunderstand the difference between being really good and being really coachable. So like I could take somebody from good to great if they're coachable and get more out of them than necessarily someone who's the best in the world who's not very coachable. So yeah, if I could think people that I really admire. I mean, I think there's people I'd want to work like alongside or work with. Like that's probably, I can answer that better. Like obviously like you see the Jocko stuff everywhere. Like I spend time with his nutrition company, helping connect them in fight sports. Like I would love to spend more time with Jocko on the professional development side. I really admire his work and the way that he thinks. Very relatable. Brene Brown was always been a big inspiration of mine. So she's like the leading expert on vulnerability. That's her niche is shame, guilt, and vulnerability. And I see how she talks about vulnerability and relate it to sports a lot. Vulnerability is I'm willing to show up, give 100% and still fail. She's found that vulnerability is the number one predictor of success in high level industry. So the people that are willing to show up, give 100%, but know that failure is an actual option, those are all, that's the number one indicator that someone's going to be successful. So I try to build into my athletes and teams how vulnerability is dope and like how vulnerability is why we're going to win. Like because you're willing to fail, you're willing to give everything that you can, knowing that failure is an option, but that's why you're going to succeed. So learning how to working with her and learning how to adapt that to sports at scale, definitely something that I'm interested in. But yeah, I mean, no particular people. I love working with people that have all the tools to be great and either one, want to be great or two, they are great. Like people have all the intangibles, the work ethic, the commitment, the coachability, the emotional intelligence. Like give me an emotionally intelligent, talented person, that is willing to commit, like Dylan says, like be relentlessly committed to what we're trying to do. I love those people. They don't have to be a John Jones. They don't have to be those people. Those are the people that built those type of people built my resume and gave me a lot of experience. And I love working in the high stakes environments, but I also love helping like the purple belt that's placed third, that's placed at Worlds 3 times but can't win. I love the brown, getting that brown belt who's always been really good but couldn't crack the rankings and then have her beat 3 people top 10 in the world over the course of 8 weeks. Like I love being a part of greatness, and whether it's helping people become great or separate themselves as being the GOAT, doesn't matter who.
What do you think about the enhanced games?
Tell me what that is.
It's basically not a spin-off, but they're going to reimagine and redo the Olympics. They're going to have 5 key sports, and their goal is to create the best humans possible, scientific and engineered. No, it's going to be track and field, combat sports, I think boxing, MMA,
this is interesting.
judo. They're going to have swimming, they're going to have gymnastics, and I'm missing one of them. But their goal is to engineer the best humans possible with steroids, testosterone, scientific testing.
Oh, got it. I figured that's what you meant.
So they're going to have no testing, encourage steroids more or less to see what the human body can do.
Oh, I mean, it's listen. At that point, it's not real sports. You know what I mean? Like, of course, if you have like, think of what back in the day the UFC looked like when all those guys were juicing, and then you saw a lot of those guys pre and post juice. They weren't the same person. So of course, you could become a superhuman, right? So if like the goal is to see like what's the absolute peak performance that we can get. By like all the enhancements humanly possible. I think it's a cool idea to see like, well, what are we actually capable of? But it's also not realistic, right? It's like I'm trying to think of how to relate it. The show CSI, you ever watch it back in the day? We all did. Like half the technology on that show doesn't exist, right? So like everyone watching it is thinking like that's how law enforcement works, and like I mean, literally, the person investigating the crime scene is analyzing the data, analyzing the labs, and also doing the interviews. Like, that's not how the shit works. And half the technology in there doesn't work either. So, like, all that stuff sounds good in theory, but it's not actually real. So, I'm interested just to see for the novelty of it, of like, yeah, like, what's the human body capable of? Like, when you take all the possible enhancements, and when you boil it down, what's the difference between someone that takes a shit ton of legal supplements? Like, I supplement like a mofo. It's all legal stuff. But like I'm on every nootropic and like recovery and all, that's enhancement too. It's not steroids. But, you know, if you want to perform at an optimal level, I don't think it's possible to do it without like some sort of significant supplementation. So if you want to be superhuman and you want to see what the body's capable of, then the only way to do that is to get enhanced.
Would you consider your athletes enhanced compared to somebody who's just in the gym every day?
100%.
Just a hard worker.
The whole purpose of my business is called the Unfair Advantage for two reasons. I market specifically to high performers. So you're going against people that are just as good, if not better, who are also good at their sport. The skill gap is very small. I want to give you an advantage that feels unfair to compete against you that they don't have. So when you go against someone that's just as good or better, what do you have that they don't? Right? So if I teach you how to break people and our goal is to take you into deep waters, you know how to swim, they know how to tread water, right? Or they're weak and they're going to drown, right? The other part of my unfair advantage is that like I only work with people, like when I work with somebody high profile, let's say they're top 10 in the world, I don't work with anybody else in the top 15. This is a team that can contend for a national championship. I won't work with anybody else. You know, so originally I was thinking about working with like one or two in the top 25. Like I'll probably just pick a sport per division. I'm sorry, a team per division per sport, you know? So unless like, for example, working with Northwestern, there's a few coaches she'd like, I'd be fine if you work with them. They're former players of mine. Real cool. Right. But like, they're not going to necessarily contend against each other.
Right.
But I'm not going to work with two, like someone approached me for Olympic trials. So I said no to other people in her weight class. She was even in my course. If she was just competing in wrestling, I probably wouldn't have done that. And if she was in my course, I would only do that for one-on-ones. But like, it's the Olympics. It's once every 4 years. And what's wild is the girl that like I was in talks with that could potentially have joined the course too. Those two wrestled each other first round of Olympic trials. Just proves my point, right? Like I want to give you an advantage that feels unfair. So that's why like my main market is really to like social and emotional intelligent high performers, because you understand the value of that and you're willing to do whatever it takes. You know, people at the top want any and every edge possible that's not going to pop them on a drug test, right? Like anything that I can do 1% at that level makes a difference. Imagine if I can make a 5-10% difference. So yeah, my goal is to make it feel like it is unfair to compete against you. Like you almost feel bad for the other person. Cause like I tell my clients, you can do things that they can't because how would I say it? You think in ways that they can't, so you can do things that they're not capable of.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what's next? Do you have anything on the horizon? Any big events coming up? Any cool people you're working with right now?
Yeah. So I was stuff on the horizon. A lot of personal time this time of the year. I never took that before. I value balance and like mini vacations more than ever. I want to work in sprints, not in sprinting marathons like I used to. So a lot of that, I'm looking forward to that. I'll go see my daughter for like 10 days. Just enjoy time with her and my family. And but coming up, I would say I've got some more so bigger announcements and like stuff I'm doing in my courses. So right now I do application only like 8-week courses for groups. They always usually sell out, fill up pretty good with like lots of high performers. This is actually the first time I'm announcing this. So I'm going to scale those courses now twofold and offer continuing education. So anyone that takes my course can now join what will be called the Bulletproof Academy, which will be, if you took my 8-week course, you can do ongoing training still in a group container, but you can have access to my entire one-on-one program. So they see about 14 worksheets during what will be called the Unfair Advantage Academy, which will be something where anyone at any level who took my course or not can join. That'll be like, the other courses are live, led by me. The other academy will be like live once a month, but it'll be like weekly video modules that are pre-recorded. Point being is that like I left my last job because I felt like my impact was low, comparatively speaking to what I was capable of. The way that the business structure was modeled, I was limited to the number of clients that I could take. I was constantly traveling all the time to garner business, not nurture business. Like, I'm here to nurture business. I'm not here to like sell all week, right? Previously, I had to go places trying to sell, couldn't nurture. Same reason I left the FBI. Like, my impact was low, and like impact for me is important. So being an entrepreneur now, like the whole goal is not just to scale the business to make more money, it's to scale my impact. And releasing what I'm going to release will allow me to scale my impact to people at every level. So the course that I run has genuinely changed people's entire life in 8 weeks. So the more that I can do that, the more macro and micro impact that I can have on the community. So I'm really excited about that. And then I do have a coaching course like the one Dylan took. I have a coaching course that I'll release like in late summer, early fall. I'm not going to name names, but let's just say some of the biggest coaches in MMA will be in that course. MMA and wrestling will be in that course, and names that every single one of us will recognize. So I'm really excited to pour into some of the best coaches because, like I told them, and like I told Dylan when he joined my course, coaches are the most important resource that we have, and we are running on fumes all the time. And when we run on fumes, if you think of this drink, there's not a lot left, right? So you run on fumes all the time. The best that I can pour into you is what's left in this. If I could teach you how to fill your cup more, you got more to pour out on other people. More importantly, let's think of a guy like Dylan, a wife that he loves. He's got a baby on the way, and he's got a young son, right? By the time that he gets home, this is what Dylan's got left. Because Dylan's a good person, he doesn't have a hole in the bottom of his cup that's constantly draining, right? But a lot of people do. You're done you're cooked by the time that you get home. Dylan, think about someone like Dylan, but not Dylan. Dylan's such a grateful, wonderful person. Think of someone like Dylan. They work all day, then they work their side job that's their passion all night. Then they go home to see the people that actually matter. They have nothing left. So I want to pour into the people that pour into so much of the best athletes in the world and help them elevate. So I'm super excited to do that as well. Oh, other cool things that I've got going on. I am speaking on a 13-day cruise that starts in Vancouver, goes to Alaska, and then ends in Japan. And
Holy cow.
yeah, and it's a cruise full of 300 digital entrepreneurs. So I'm really excited to pour into those people. That'll be one of the for me kicking off the scalable business coaching side of my platform. Like, I work with two former athletes that are in business right now. One's the VP of sales for a very large company in wrestling. The other one runs a hedge fund that manages over 600 billion. He personally manages $600 billion. Former Division I wrestler, right? And the other guy works in wrestling. So like, I've done executive coaching for them for the last 6 months. I've done a bunch of business people over the years, done a bunch of business talks, but this cruise will be like the official launch of what I'm doing for athletes with these 8-week programs. I'll start doing for entrepreneurs.
Wow.
So that's the next thing that I'm excited about. Like, scaling your business does mean more money, but in my line of work, I tell people I'm not in the winning business, I'm in the impact business. Like what wakes me up in the morning is changing people's lives and helping people win big shit, doing things they didn't think they were supposed to do. You know, some of the wins that I've been a part of have literally changed the landscape of people's entire life. And if I have 1% or 75% to do with that, like that's so cool. So the more people that I can impact, like it's just like coaching sports. If I impact you and impart you with good knowledge, and then you're going to go on and coach or mentor or run a business, lead a family, you're going to take my values and my lessons and then go somewhere else and then go somewhere else. And then like you're going to teach somebody else who goes somewhere else. So I feel like what people like Mode are doing and what I'm doing is going to generally change the landscape of like how life is lived. And that's why I'm excited to like go down the science route because I want this shit to blow up worldwide. Like people have called me the Tony Robbins of the sports world because I essentially coach on social and emotional intelligence, right? Like I want in the next 5 years, I want to be speaking at a Tony Robbins event. In the next 3 years after that, I want Tony to ask to speak at one of mine.
Whoa.
You know, like I didn't do this shit. I'm going to quote my Australian clients. This is hilarious. There's a saying my Australian clients say all the time, like, you know, people would be like, oh, we didn't come here to fuck around. Well, the Australians say, I didn't come here to go fuck spiders. You know, like I didn't come here to be good at what I did. I didn't come here to make a living. Like I came here to change. I got into this industry to change the whole fucking game. And when people think of sports and mindset in the next couple years, I want them to think of me. In combat sports, apparently, like a lot of people, when they think of sports and mindset, they think of me. I get recommendations from people I've never even fucking. Their coach never worked. I never worked with them or anything. They're like, that guy. He like that's the guy. You know, like former UFC fighters, like champions in other sports and stuff. They're like, oh, that's definitely like that's the guy. Well, I want people to know that shit like they know Joe Rogan's name. That's my goal, and not because I want the fame, because I want to be so famous because of the impact that I've made, the change that I've made. Mm-hmm. You know, think of some of the people that have changed the landscapes of certain industries. You know how Elon Musk disrupted the entire world, creating the movement for electric cars. Like Prius and shit did not make everyone want to have electric cars. Tesla did. Mm-hmm. Tesla's the reason. Elon Musk is the reason. Like I want to be a disruptor. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be involved in any capacity with Mode. Like Luke, the guy that's creating that school, like he's a disruptor. He's going to disrupt the medical industry, the education industry. People ask me all the time, like, how do you change the world? The world's so weak. I was like, bro, K-6. Like teach resilience and conflict resolution and thought management and self-regulation in elementary, have an elevated curriculum in middle school and high school. What Mode's doing is going to in multiple realms in sports, in education, and in the medical field is literally going to disrupt the entire industry. And they have the drive and the resources and the people to do it. So that's why I was like, I didn't even know the depths of what they were doing until I came here. I was just here to support Dylan because I think I don't necessarily see Dylan as a disruptor. I just see him as someone that like he's done something so special, so special so quickly that I think he's going to be like a go-to figure in the realm of strength and conditioning. Mm-hmm. Dylan's going to be leading his own coaching program in the next 5-10 years. Dylan's going to be teaching DL training systems to mass the way Coach Myers gut check from Dustin Myers from Ohio State. Like he disrupted the entire, I don't say disrupted, but he revolutionized the way we did strength and conditioning in wrestling. You know, and I think that Dylan is going to change the game through the community that he builds. Like, I've said this to Dylan. I don't think he realizes like his best asset, one of his best assets is his ability to build community because he genuinely cares about all of his people. So they genuinely work hard for him and he's built community. He's grown not just because he's really good at what he does. He's grown because he's built so much community. And anyways, just I'm rambling now, but what Mode is doing and what Dylan's doing is like super cool. So I'm happy to be a part of it in any capacity. And I'm sure all of you that are behind the scenes there all the time, like you see it firsthand. Mm-hmm. I could spot it from a mile away. Hence why I got on a plane and spent the weekend here.
Wow. Well, I'm certainly fired up and I'm about to have myself a day. That's for sure. I'm honored to have you here. I'm excited to say
Thank you.
that I got to talk to a guy that was on Rogan. So that's pretty exciting. I might try to smuggle myself onto that cruise.
You should.
Seems like you got a lot to offer, and I'm glad I got to meet you and sit down with
Thank
you
you.
for a while.
I appreciate it. I want to give a quick shout out. Obviously, you see all the Jocko products around here. It's not because I'm a part of the company that I bring them around with me. All of you consume hydration drinks. All of you consume energy drinks. All of you consume pre-workouts. I used to work at the vitamin shop. And when I worked at the vitamin shop, I tried every pre-workout known to man when pre-workout was first coming out. And you crash, you get jitters. It's made with low quality ingredients. So I think this company represents so much of what I believe in, as far as like the quality that they put in their product. So if you guys see all this around, it's not just strategic advertising. Like I want you guys to understand that a product like this with no fake colors, no fake sugars, clean sourced ingredients. Like if you're an elite athlete and you're trying to be elite, but you put C4 in your body or bang in your body, or literally 90% of things that are made with low quality fake stuff. Like I just went through 10 grand to fix my gut. And, these are the only supplements that don't upset my stomach. So I just want to give a big shout out to Jocko Fuel, and I want you guys to, if you care about what goes in your body, look at the research that's done on jockofuel.com. You're welcome to use my code Mindset10 to save some money, but this energy drink only has 100 milligrams of caffeine. So I can have 2 or 3 of these a day. It's loaded with nootropics so I could focus. It doesn't have any fake colors or fake sugars to make my stomach not feel good. The products that they put in are as quality as the advice that Jocko gives out. So just wanted to give them a shout out, because if you're listening to someone like me and you're following podcasts like Bears, like you probably care about what you consume here. So let's care equally about what we consume here as well.
Beautiful. Anything else you got to say? Any closing words, or where can they find you, or anybody
Yeah.
else you want to
So if you guys want to find me, best place to find me is on Instagram, mindset_Mike. You can look at the unfairadvantagemindset.com. That is my website. If you're interested in joining my course, we run it about every 12 weeks. You can apply at either the link that's in my Instagram bio. You can apply for it on my website. There's tons of call to actions for you to do that. You're welcome to DM me on Instagram. That's the easiest way to gain access to me. Obviously, like there's always select openings for one-on-one clients as well, but I love the community aspect in my course. It's very interactive, very, very intensive. And I would love to have you guys on there, because if you're consuming content like this, imagine if I can systematically teach you all the things that we've talked about today. So, again, I just want to thank you for having me on here, and I'm excited to see the content that we put out, because I think it's going to help a lot of people.
I did too. Thank you again. I'm honored. This has been amazing. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks again. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Peace.
Thanks, guys.